Imagine inheriting an old house and discovering it hides dark and dangerous secrets. Emily, a curious young woman, can't resist the temptation to explore every corner of the Victorian mansion she just received. But, alongside her brother Jake and her friend Sarah, what starts as a simple adventure quickly turns into a confrontation with the unknown. What will they find in the dark and mysterious basement? In this video, you'll follow Emily and her friends on a suspense-filled journey where each discovery could uncover long-buried mysteries. Get ready for a story that challenges the limits of fear, courage, and what it really means to face your own demons.
Behind the doors.
The old Victorian house in Salem, Massachusetts, stood tall and solemn, like a silent guardian of secrets long buried. Its walls, worn by time, seemed to whisper stories with every gust of wind that passed by. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of aged wood and dust that had settled in every corner of each room. It was in this setting that Emily, a young woman with dark brown hair and curious eyes, decided to explore the basement of the house she had recently inherited. "Jake, come here! Look at this!" Emily exclaimed, as she descended the creaking steps to the basement. Her younger brother, Jake, with his messy hair and the expression of someone always ready for an adventure, followed her closely, dragging his feet with a mix of excitement and apprehension. Sarah, the skeptical and practical friend, hesitated at the entrance, crossing her arms. "You shouldn't be down here, Emily. This place feels, well, haunted," said Sarah, looking around distrustfully. The shadows danced on the walls, and the dim light from the hanging lamp only made them more nervous. "Oh, come on, Sarah. Where's your sense of adventure? We have to see what else this house is hiding," Emily replied with a challenging smile. She moved further in, drawn by an inexplicable feeling that something was waiting for her in the dark. When they reached the back of the "Look at this!" She pointed to an old door, almost invisible under the blanket of grime. The wood was worn, but the handle, though rusty, seemed intact. "Leave it alone, Emily. It could be dangerous," Jake said, already feeling a knot in his stomach. "Dangerous? That's exactly what makes it more interesting," Emily responded, a spark in her eyes. Jake looked to Sarah for support, but she just shook her head, still reluctant. "Are you sure you want to do this? What if there's something behind there?" Sarah questioned, trying to inject some rationality into the situation. Emily's determination was unshakable. "I need to know what's in there. Just a little push, Jake, please." She turned to her brother, who, in a burst of courage, stepped forward and began to force the door. "Wait! Don't do it!" Sarah exclaimed, but it was too late. The door creaked under Jake's pressure, and as it opened, a rusty blade hidden in the lock popped out, cutting his finger. Jake let out a sharp cry, clutching his hand as blood started to flow. "Jake!" Emily rushed to him, concerned. "Are you okay?" "No, I'm not. Look what you did," Jake replied, tears welling up as he examined the cut. Sarah approached, now more alarmed. "We need to get out of here. This place isn't safe. Let's go back upstairs, please." But Emily's curiosity outweighed her concern. "No, wait. I want to see what's in there." She looked at the half-open door, the darkness almost calling to her. "It's just a little more, Jake. We can't let this stop us. What if there's something really bad in there? I'm not comfortable with this," Jake insisted, trying to contain the fear that was beginning to grip him. "I know it's risky, but what if we find something incredible? Something that explains everything about this house?" Emily replied, her voice bubbling with a thrill of discovery. Sarah, crossing her arms and looking down, muttered, "You guys are crazy. This can only end badly." But Emily wasn't ready to give up. The door was there, slightly ajar, and the promise of mysteries awaited. "Just one more look, and if we don't like it, we'll leave. I promise," she assured, trying to calm both her brother and friend. Jake hesitated, looking at his wounded finger, and then at the intensity in Emily's eyes. "Okay, but if anything happens, we're out of here immediately." "Deal," Emily smiled, feeling the adrenaline rush through her veins. With one last glance at Jake and Sarah, she pushed the door open a little more, allowing the darkness of the unknown to seep into their hearts. Whatever was on the other side was about to be discovered. As Emily pushed the door open, a deep creak echoed down the dark and narrow corridor that stretched before them. The dim light filtering in from the basement barely illuminated the space, revealing walls covered with old photographs, which seemed to watch the three youths with empty, sorrowful eyes. The images, faded by time, depicted unfamiliar faces, some with expressions of joy, others of pain, as if each one held a dark secret. Jake, holding on to Emily's hand, couldn't suppress a shiver. "This is kind of creepy, don't you think?" Jake commented, his nervous tone echoing in the corridor's silence. "Oh, come on, Jake, it's just a corridor. We have to see what else is down here," Emily responded, her curiosity overpowering any fear she might feel. The adrenaline was coursing through her veins. Sarah, on the other hand, remained cautious. "I think we should have stayed upstairs. We don't know what could be waiting for us here," she said, giving a quick glance back, as if the safety of the upper floor could somehow protect them from the unknown. "Look, we can't let fear get the best of us now. Let's just take a quick look. If we don't find anything interesting, we'll go back," Emily insisted, her voice filled with determination. As they moved forward, the corridor became narrower and darker. The air was thick, as if the place was straining to keep its secrets hidden. When they reached the end of the corridor, they found an old door made of dark wood with intricate details, slightly ajar. Emily's heart raced. "Come on! What are you waiting for?" Sarah exclaimed, somewhat apprehensive but still drawn by the curiosity that surrounded her. In the room, they were greeted by a disturbing sight. Broken mirrors covered the walls, each one reflecting distorted and fragmented figures of themselves. The dim light seemed to dance on the pieces of glass, casting long, threatening shadows. The cold emanating from the room was almost palpable, and a sense of being watched enveloped them all. "This is bizarre," murmured Jake, trying to avoid looking at the mirrors. "Why are all these mirrors here?" "I don't know, but it's like they're alive," replied Emily, her voice almost a whisper. She approached one of the mirrors, examining its cracked surface. In the reflection, she saw not only her image, but something else, a shadow that seemed to move behind her. "Emily, don't touch them," Sarah warned, the concern evident in her voice. "It could be dangerous." But before she could respond, a soft, chilling whisper cut through the silence, coming from one of the mirrors. The words were unintelligible, but the sense of urgency in the voice sent a wave of fear down everyone's spine. "Did you hear that?" Jake asked, his voice trembling. "What was that?" I don't know," Emily replied, her heart racing. "Maybe it's just the wind." "No, that wasn't the wind. It's like someone's trying to communicate," Sarah insisted, looking around as if expecting a figure to emerge from the shadows. "We need to get out of here." "This isn't normal," Jake said, starting to retreat towards the door they had entered through. "Wait, let's just listen a little longer. What if it's someone who needs help?" Emily challenged, her curiosity driving her closer to one of the broken mirrors. She felt an inexplicable urge to touch the cold surface of the glass. "Emily, you're being crazy!" Sarah shouted, grabbing her friend's arm. "Don't do it!" But before she could stop her, Emily reached out and touched the surface of the mirror. The instant her fingers met the glass, a wave of cold enveloped her, and the room seemed to spin for a brief moment. The distorted reflections surrounded her, creating a labyrinth of images that danced before her eyes. "Emily!" Jake shouted, his face reflecting absolute fear. "Come back!" The atmosphere was charged with tension, and the feeling that something was about to happen became almost unbearable. Jake was frozen in place. The sight of the shadowy figure that had lunged towards Emily still burned in his mind, like a nightmare refusing to fade. He wanted to scream, run, leave this cursed house behind. But his sister's curiosity and Sarah's bravery seemed stronger than the instinct to survive. "We need to leave now," he exclaimed, his voice trembling. "Did you see that? What was that?" Emily, on the other hand, was fascinated. The faint light emanating from the door seemed to pulse, calling her like she turned to Jake, trying to calm him. "But what if there's more here? Something we need to understand?" "I don't want to know. What more do we need to understand besides the fact that we're in a house full of spirits and creepy things?" Jake replied, crossing his arms. Sarah, who had been observing the scene with a skeptical look, decided to intervene. "Jake, I get that you're scared, But we can't just leave without finding out what's going on. This house has a history, and we're here. We might be the only ones who can discover the truth. Or we could be the last ones to leave alive, Jake retorted. But Emily's determination and Sarah's logic were beginning to affect him. The curiosity that had made him want to explore the basement now confronted him more intensely. Let's move closer to the door. If we don't like what we find, we'll leave immediately, okay? Emily said, taking a step towards the light that spread across the wax-covered floor. As they approached, the smell of hot wax filled the air, mixed with something Jake couldn't identify. He looked down, noticing the candles, some still lit, others extinguished and melted into grotesque shapes. "This is really strange," he murmured, his voice now lower, almost a whisper. "A ritual," Sarah concluded, running her fingers over the wax remnants. It seems someone was definitely doing something here. Emily reached for the doorknob, feeling a sharp chill that pierced through her as she touched the metal. "I'm about to open it," she announced, looking at her friends. "Ready?" Jake hesitated. "No, we're not ready for this, Emily." But she had already turned the knob, and the door slowly creaked open, as if waking from a long sleep. Inside, it was darker than the corridor, and the faint light seemed to focus on a specific point, almost as if it were waiting for them. "Let's go in," said Emily. But before she could take another step, a shadow quickly darted towards her, taking shape in front of them. The dark figure looked more like a blot of darkness than a defined entity. An indescribable fear filled the room, and everyone stepped back, their hearts pounding. "Let's go back, now!" Jake shouted, pulling Emily's arm, who was paralyzed, fixated on the presence. Sarah, on the other hand, tried to remain calm. "Wait, what if it's just an illusion? We need to understand what this is." But Emily, finally snapping out of the trance, screamed, "We can't stay here!" And she pulled Jake, who, still reluctant, began to give in. Together, the three of them retreated, running back through the corridor, the echo of their hurried steps resounding off the cold, damp walls. The terror followed them, and the feeling that something was watching them grew with every second. The door that had led them to the basement now seemed like an insurmountable barrier, and the desire to escape grew within them like a desperate cry for freedom. But the house would not let them go so easily. The air in the corridor felt heavy and oppressive as Emily, Jake, and Sarah ran back, their breaths ragged with adrenaline and panic. The echo of their footsteps reverberated off the stone walls, a rapid beat that mingled with the sound of their racing hearts. Reaching the door that had led them to the basement, Emily reached out to turn the knob, but the door was inexplicably locked. "No, it can't be locked!" Emily cried out, trying to push the door with all her strength. But it was as if an invisible barrier was keeping it sealed. "Come on, we have to find another way out," Jake exclaimed, his face pale with the fear they all felt. He looked around, searching for an alternative. "There has to be another way out of here." "Stay together," Sarah warned, her voice trembling. "We can't separate. That will only make things worse." As the pressure of the situation mounted, Sarah's gaze fixed on an object lying on the floor, partially covered by a layer of dust. She approached cautiously, and as she bent down, she revealed an old diary, its pages yellowed and worn. "Look at this," she said, holding the diary out to them as if it were a treasure. "A diary? What does that have to do with us?" Jake asked, his tone skeptical but tinged with curiosity. "It might have information about the house, about what happened here," Emily responded, her interest piqued. "Let's read it." Sarah opened the diary carefully, its pages creaking as if they were protesting against the light that now illuminated them. "It's handwritten," she commented, running her fingers over the letters in an effort to decipher the ancient words. "It seems to be from a woman named Agnes." "Agnes, who is she?" Jake asked, leaning in to read as well. "Wait," Sarah said, beginning to read aloud. "Agnes lived here at the end of the 19th century. She practiced rituals, dark rituals." The expressions on everyone's faces grew serious, and dread began to seep into their minds. "Rituals? What is she talking about?" Jake asked, uneasy. Sarah continued, ignoring the question. "She mentions a curse, something that haunts everyone who enters this house. It says that those who don't respect the rituals are doomed to suffer." "This is crazy," Jake declared, trying to maintain logic amid the chaos. "It's just an old diary. We can't believe everything that's written here." But Emily, her mind racing, questioned, "What if it's true? What if everything we're experiencing is related to this curse?" "The pages talk about an entity, something that feeds on fear," Sarah continued, her voice now a whisper. "She said the only way to escape was to confront what lies within." A cold shiver ran down everyone's spine as the candlelight began to flicker, casting dancing shadows on the walls. The atmosphere was becoming increasingly dense, as if the house itself were alive, watching them. "We need to get out of here, now!" Jake shouted again, his voice filled with desperation. "Look, the diary goes on," Sarah said, trying to focus. "She mentioned some kind of release ritual. It says that if someone has enough courage to perform the ritual, they can break the curse." "Ritual? What does that mean?" Emily asked, her heart pounding. "I don't know, but it seems to involve acknowledging and confronting your own fears," Sarah replied, the tension in her voice evident. At that moment, a whisper echoed down the corridor, a voice that seemed to drag along the walls. "Help me!" The word resonated with pain and despair, as if someone were pleading for help. "Who's there?" Jake shouted, his tone revealing his fear. "Show yourself!" The voice faded, but the feeling that they were not alone only intensified. Emily felt a chill run through her body. "We need to decide," she said, taking a deep breath. "We need to find a way to face this. We can't let the house defeat us." "But how?" Jake questioned, the anxiety clear in his eyes. "Let's read more. Maybe there's something in this diary that can help us," Emily insisted, her determination growing as fear transformed into courage. Sarah resumed flipping through the diary, while a new wave of cold enveloped them, as if the house were about to reveal more of its dark secrets, of no return. Jake held the diary with trembling hands, the candlelight flickering around him, as if the very atmosphere were reacting to what he was about to say. "It says here that the woman who lived in the house, Abigail, practiced rituals to connect with the beyond. She believed she could free the trapped souls, but something went wrong," he began to read aloud, his hesitant voice echoing in the room. "On a fateful night, during one of the rituals, a shadow took over the room. That shadow, they say, is the very curse that remains to this day." The words dragged out, each syllable seeming to awaken a dark response in the air. As he uttered the name of the resident, the candlelight seemed to flicker, and a cold wind swept through the room, causing the three of them to shrink back. "Jake, this isn't a good idea," Sarah said, her gaze fixed on the shadows that seemed to dance on the walls. "We should stop. We shouldn't mess with this." The concern in her eyes contrasted with Emily's determination, who watched her brother with a mix of fear and curiosity. "But what if this is the key to understanding what happened here? We need to know what happened to her, to the souls," Emily insisted, her heart racing. She felt drawn to the story, as if she were destined to uncover the truth. Jake, still hesitant, continued reading. "The shadow fed on fear and pain, and those who dared to break the mirrors, well, they didn't return." As the last words left his lips, a sepulchral silence fell over the room. The air was heavy, filled with palpable tension. Suddenly, the mirrors began to emit a strange glow, as if something were awakening them. "What's happening?" Jake asked, panic seeping into his voice. "I feel like the room is spinning." He grabbed onto a nearby table, trying to steady himself. "We can't stay here," Sarah shouted, as distorted images of their own faces reflected in the broken mirrors. Each fragment showed a terrifying version of themselves, a future they feared. "We need to leave now. But if Abigail is trapped here, maybe breaking the mirrors will free her soul and the others," Emily suggested, her mind racing with the idea. That's what she wanted, right? To free the souls. "You're crazy, Emily. This could be dangerous," Jake exclaimed, but the determination in his sister's eyes was unshakable. "We have to try, Jake. It's the only way." With a quick movement, Emily picked up a stone from the floor and threw it at the nearest mirror. The glass shattered into 1,000 pieces, and a cry echoed through the room. Not a cry of pain, but of relief. A wave of cold swept through the space, and the candlelight flickered intensely. "Come on, faster!" Emily shouted, grabbing another stone and breaking another mirror. Each time the glass shattered, the room trembled, and the whispers grew louder, as if the trapped souls were manifesting. Jake hesitated, but Emily's determination forced him to act. He joined her, smashing the mirrors with growing fury. "I don't know if this is right," he shouted, but Emily's voice urged him on. "We have to do this, Jake. We can't let fear control us." With each broken mirror, visions of their future emerged, like shadows of their worst nightmares. Jake saw himself alone, lost in a sea of darkness, while Sarah saw herself surrounded by familiar but distant faces who ignored her. Emily, on the other hand, glimpsed a version of herself, unable to escape her own sadness. But at the same time, there was a light, a promise of release. "Come on! Just one more!" Emily shouted, and in a final effort, she broke the last mirror. The cracking of the glass echoed like thunder, and the room was enveloped in blinding light. The shadowy figure watching them seemed to hesitate, as if being pulled back. The room spun one last time. Fear enveloped them, but there was also a sense of hope, as if release was within reach. "We're almost there!" Jake shouted as the light began to dispel the shadows. They were ready to face the unknown, and the truth was about to be revealed. The echo of the broken mirrors still resonated in the minds of Emily, Jake, and Sarah, as each fragment reflected not only their distorted images, but also the deepest insecurities each one carried. Emily stared at her reflection, tears threatening to spill down her face. "I've always been the weakest," she murmured, unable to look away. "I'm never enough." Jake beside her shook his head, anguished. "No, you're not. You're the bravest of us." But his own insecurity showed in his eyes, a shadow of doubt hovering over his expression. "I just wanted to be like you, Emily. Always strong, always in control." Sarah, observing the dynamic between the siblings, felt her own fear emerge. What if this is all true? What if we never get out of here? What if this is all our fault? Her voice trembled, reflecting the anxiety consuming her. "We're nothing but lost children in a haunted house." It was in this moment of vulnerability that a bright light began to emanate from the center of the circle. The three looked at each other, confused and frightened. The shadowy figure that had previously terrified them began to materialize in the glow, revealing itself as a woman with an ethereal appearance, dressed in a faded Victorian gown. Her eyes, once mere shadows, now shone with a warm light. "Do not be afraid," said the woman, her voice as soft as a whisper. "I am the guardian of this house, and the curse you fear is not what it seems." Emily stepped forward, her heart racing. "But what should we do? We broke the mirrors." "Exactly. You broke the illusions that trapped you," the woman replied, her presence illuminating the room. "But to truly break the curse, you must confront what you see. There is no protection in hiding behind your fears." Jake, taken by a moment of courage, looked into the woman's eyes. "What if we can't do it? What if the truth we find is more painful than we can bear? Then you must unite. The strength of one alone is not enough, but together you can face any challenge." The woman extended her hands, and a wave of energy pulsed towards them. "The only way to free the trapped souls is to accept your truths." With a deep sigh, Sarah approached. I've always been afraid of not being enough, of never being as good as others expect me to be." The words came out like a sigh, tears finally streaming down her face. The woman nodded. "Accept it, Sarah. You are more than your insecurities. It's time to free yourself." Emily, feeling a wave of empathy, held Sarah's hand. "We're in this together. We are enough. It may seem hard, but we're stronger than we think." Jake, gathering courage, joined them. "I too. I'm afraid of not being a good brother, of failing you both. But I don't want to live with this fear anymore." The figure smiled, a soft glow in her eyes. "Now, unite. Together, face what you fear most." The three positioned themselves in a triangle, hands joined, their eyes fixed on the light emanating from the woman. A warm sensation enveloped their bodies, and suddenly the reflections in the mirrors began to change. The distorted images became clearer, revealing not only their fears, but their true essences. "It's time to face the darkness," said the woman as the light grew in intensity, enveloping them completely. "You are stronger than you think. Accept this and free yourselves." With a cry of determination, Emily, Jake, and Sarah raised their voices together, challenging their fears. And at that moment, the light exploded, breaking the chains that bound them. The shadowy figure dissipated, revealing a new beginning, a space where the curse unraveled and the souls finally found peace. As the light settled, the three found themselves in a different place, far from the darkness that had surrounded them. The terror had transformed into hope, and together, they understood that true strength lay in unity and in facing their truths.